Aloha, my name is John Lynham, and I'm a professor in economics at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. The University of Hawaii Sea-Grant College program, otherwise known as Hawai'i Sea-Grant, is based at the University of Hawaii at Manoa in Honolulu, Hawaii. Hawai'i Sea-Grant supports an innovative program of research, education, and extension services directed to the improved understanding and stewardship of coastal and marine resources of the state, region, and nation. Hawai'i Sea-Grant Podcast number 11, Beach Loss, Property Gain.
Aloha, and welcome to our 321 podcast. My name is Mahealani.
This is Rachel.
This is John.
And I'm Mel.
And we are part of Hawai'i Sea-Grant and the University of Hawaii, located in Honolulu, Hawaii.
This podcast features research supported by Hawai'i Sea-Grant. Each episode will highlight a new project and the people that make the project possible.
We will ask these researchers for 3 words that describe their research, give them 2 minutes to explain how their research benefits communities here in Hawaii, and end by asking them to provide one thing they know about each other than their research. So, 3 words, 2 minutes, and 1 thing. It's a 321 podcast. All right, well, who goes to the beach?
Yeah, occasionally.
Okay.
Probably every day.
Oh, yeah? Alrighty, so who owns waterfront property?
Are you kidding? I'm not a millionaire.
So when you invest money in a home or a property, you want to upkeep it and protect it.
Well, that certainly takes time and money.
What if your property's value goes down?
I see red flags, mass panic.
And major bumming out.
Yeah, major.
So, what are 3 words that describe your research?
The 3 words we have chosen are beggar thy neighbor.
Why those 3 words?
So, beggar thy neighbor is a phrase attributed actually to an economist by the name of Adam Smith, who is sort of the godfather or grandfather of modern economic thought. And so this phrase, beggar thy neighbor, captures the idea of gaining at the loss of other people, in particular your neighbors. Because what we're studying is whether seawalls are a beggar thy neighbor way of protecting your property.
We're learning about effects of seawalls in this podcast, specifically how a seawall may hurt or help property values on Oahu. Here to share their research are Dr. John Lynham and his graduate student, Mel Accad.
Before we ask you how your research benefits communities here in Hawaii, let's talk about a few scientific words. 3 words that you use a lot in your research are coastal hardening, seawalls, and erosion. Can you provide definitions for these words?
For coastal hardening, it means you're putting up anything that protects your property along the shoreline. And one type of coastal hardening is seawalls.
So erosion refers to the loss of sand and beach width. And we're kind of interested in studying this link between seawalls and erosion.
So tell us in 2 minutes or less how your research benefits the communities here in Hawaii.
People have suspected that building a seawall has a negative financial impact on other beachfront or near beach property owners. You often hear stories about this. I had a friend posting about this on Facebook a few weeks ago, that their family home had lost a large part of its value because their neighbor had put up a seawall. And we're trying to move from some of those qualitative stories to a quantitative, rigorous analysis of what are some of the costs of putting up seawalls.
Let's recap. When asked to provide 3 words that describe your research, you said, beggar thy neighbor. You provided definitions for 3 scientific words that are commonly used in your research. These words were coastal hardening, seawalls, and erosion. We've learned about your research and how your research will benefit communities here in Hawaii. So let's get technical. How do you do what you do? You're economist, right?
Yes, we are economists, not geologists. And to do our project, we use a technique that economists call hedonic pricing, which is a fancy term for describing the process of looking at two goods that are absolutely identical except for one feature, and then comparing the price of those two goods to get a sense of how much people value that additional feature. So the simplest example I can think of is two iPhones. Let's say the iPhone 8, same iPhone, all of the same features, except one has, let's say, 32 gigabytes of storage, and the other phone has 64 gigabytes of storage. And let's say the phone with 64 gigabytes of storage costs $800.
Okay.
It's probably cheaper than what it really costs. And the other phone costs $500. If I observe Mahealani going into the Apple store and paying $800 for that 64 gigabyte phone, that's a clear signal to me that she values that additional 32 gigabytes of storage at least $300. She probably values it more, but she's willing to pay $300 for that additional storage. By analyzing her purchasing decisions, you can infer how much she values that attribute. In an ideal world, we would find two beachfront properties on Oahu that are absolutely identical in every single feature, same square footage, same number of bedrooms, same number of bathrooms, exact same architecture, etc., etc., except one of those properties, their neighbor has built a seawall, and the other property, their neighbor hasn't. And then we compare the difference in the resale value of those properties to see, is it true that your own property loses value when your neighbor builds a seawall?
But in the real world, I would think that'd be hard to find.
In the real world, that obviously doesn't exist. So we use a variety of different approaches and techniques to try to deal with the fact that there are no two identical properties out there. We find properties that are as similar as possible, and this is where Mel has been working on looking at old historical photographs to build a time series of where seawalls have been built and when over time on this island. We then look in 1985, these sort of similar properties, but with a $200,000 price difference. One gets their neighbor building a seawall, and then 5 years later, the price difference is now $400,000. They've lost a lot more value because of their neighbor putting up a seawall. And it's that change over time that we attribute then to the seawall. And so even though the properties aren't identical, by kind of differencing out the difference in prices that must be due to some of these unobserved features, we can get a more robust estimate of what has been the effect of seawalls on property values.
Well, that's a wrap. But before we go, we want to ask you, John, what's one thing you know about Mel other than his research?
Well, I just found out that Mel is really into photography.
Well, that's great.
Looking at pictures.
Yes, I didn't realize that his work on this project has also been kind of related to one of his favorite hobbies. So Mel enjoys doing urban and city photography, but he's been doing more nature-based photography since he moved to Hawaii.
And Mel, what's one thing you know about John other than his research?
He's very well known as a surfer in our department.
Oh, I see. That's why you're at the beach every day. Huh?
It's got that
I
surfer
see.
look.
Okay.
Doing research. I'm doing research.
Oh,
Surfers.
sure. Looking at the seawalls.
Yes. Yeah,
From the
yeah.
ocean side.
That's
Measure.
right. Well, stay tuned for our next podcast, and mahalo for listening. Aloha.
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 This Hawai'i Seagrant 321 podcast featured 3 songs: Happiness by bensound.com, Ukulele by bensound.com, and Cute by bensound.com. Find it on iTunes or bensound.com.